Okay, so I think we'll begin. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Richard Cavilla, Regional Sales Director at DocuWare in the UK, and I'm here to present the next in the series of the DocuWare webinars, today focusing on the digital mailroom. So, um, so today's agenda, very straightforward. We're going to have a short introduction and presentation. Then we're going to transition into a demonstration of the digital mailroom with DocuWare, and then we'll finish up on Q&A. Now, you'll be able to ask questions all throughout the webinar, so drop them in and we'll be able to get to them at the end. I'm hoping everyone can hear me okay. I think you've got a little hand that you can raise in your GoToWebinar thing. Yep, looks like you can all hear me. Excellent news. So let's begin. So I think we can all agree over the last month or so, we're now looking at a new normal. Employees are working remotely, and this change has been forced on a number of users. And for many businesses, they're just not ready for it. And one of the great challenges we're seeing currently with a lot of our customers and through our partners is the discussion around digital mailroom. Businesses rely very heavily on physical posts, and I think if you look at this statistic on the screen, I appreciate this is for the UK. Last year in 2019, we processed over 10.3 billion letters within the UK. Now, if we expand that out to the wider EMEA and globally, I think you can agree that that number is only going to increase massively. And post is business critical and remains hugely critical to businesses globally. So the traditional office needs to adapt to a remote workforce, but there's a number of problems. Once we have people working from home, especially under short notice, they don't necessarily have the tools they need to complete the job. And if we think about the physical mail that's delivered to offices, there's nobody there to pick that up. The employees are working from home and that mail is still coming into the office. So we need to think about how we can process that mail and how we can make that accessible to the users within organizations. Now, this is a serious question because, yes, these days a lot of documents and data are digitized, but physical mail still goes into the office. And we need to ask the questions. If invoices are going into the office, how do we pay the invoices? Are we going to get late payment fees, or are suppliers going to put us on credit hold? Are we going to miss early payment discounts? What if there's legal pressing documents, contracts that need signing? If they're in the office and no one's there, these documents don't get signed. And what about other business critical documents that need prompt attention for people? These questions can be answered with the introduction of a digital mailroom by DocuWare. So I guess the question, what's happening now at customers? So post is still piling up at customers, and they've got really one of three options. They can either do nothing and leave the post in the office, and this leads to missed information. And with this missed information, employees are unable to carry on business as usual. They're unable to make informed decisions about the business. SLAs are impacted if we can't process invoices, if we can't process contracts, and if we can't process customer queries that are coming in, we run the risk of missing out on SLAs. But additional to that, we've got the probably one of the key ones as well with the invoices, accounts payable and accounts receivable processes. We're now talking about the cash flow in an organization. With physical mail, if we can't access that, that cash flow can potentially stop. Another option may be from the office that the post could actually be forwarded on by mail. Now, this will work, but this is going to be delays for the recipient. Again, we're going to start to look at the missed information and impacted SLAs, and this will ultimately lead to reduction in productivity. But in addition to that, the additional costs of forwarding on mail are going to be incurred by the customer. And we also have the ability, obviously, organizations to do the more traditional scan and email, which is absolutely fine. It works, but it's very unstructured. And organizations run the risk that they're not able to kind of manage that process properly. Has the post or has the scan been sent to the wrong person? But also as well, we've got problems with it's error prone. If the user doesn't action their email or doesn't view it, or it's gone to the wrong person, how does the mail operator or how does the organization know where that post is without looking deeply or getting the IT team involved? So we have the problem with the visibility of the documents. They're not centrally visible, but also as well, the audit trail is very hard for organizations to find without getting the IT department involved. I think probably one of the big key things here is around security. Sending via email, some mail services are not secure, so you run the risk of hackers being able to intercept that data. So kind of let's explore who would need a mailroom, why they would need a mailroom, and how we can provide a solution. So the question who, I think we can probably agree, any organisation that receives mail, physical mail, but it's not just physical mail, it's also mail we receive by things like email as well. And we need to understand limited access to premises or a dispersed workforce. So not only during coronavirus, but even with the kind of day-to-day going forward, if post is going to a central location and your workforce is dispersed across many sites, it becomes very tricky and very hard to forward that mail on quickly and easily. And it's fair to say the increased numbers of home users. Now, why? The big question, why would we need it? Well, physical mail is very hard to distribute easily. I think we saw in the previous slide, we've got three options. We do nothing, we send by email, or we forward by post. But this ultimately leads to delays in business processes and again, costs to the business. Now, how do we provide a solution with DocuWare for the mailroom? It's very simple. We can introduce a simple capture workflow solution with full audit trail, which is encrypted and secure across the organization. So how does how could a digital mailroom work? Now, in our scenario, and we're going to look at a demonstration of incoming and outgoing mail within DocuWare. For purposes of simplicity, this is what the workflow is going to look like. So we can probably break it down into kind of four key areas. We're going to physically scan the mail into the DocuWare solution, but we need to somehow index and classify what that mail is. And by that, and with the index information, we can then route this to individuals within the organization. And then once the recipient receives the mail, they can simply read it, review it, receipt it. But then we could then forward this on to other areas of the business or reroute that back to the mailroom if it was sent in error. We're also going to look at an outgoing mail process whereby using DocuWare forms, we can provide a self-service portal where users can submit a document that may need to be physically posted back to the mailroom and then forwarded on to the end user. So all of this we can handle securely and all within the DocuWare workflow. So how do we get documents into DocuWare? Now, as we know, or as many of you will know, there's a number of different ways we can get documents into the DocuWare system. Typically with the mail, we're looking at physical mail. So first and foremost, DocuWare has a built-in scanning application. We're going to look at this in the demonstration as well, but the scanning application built into DocuWare will allow you to scan from any directly or USB connected Twain or WIA scanner. And in the scanning application, we get a number of options of capturing the documents, splitting the documents, but also as well making changes to the quality or the output of the scanned image. In addition to this, and particularly if you're in an office, we've got the ability, as you know, to scan directly from multifunctional devices. Now, this is completely independent of vendor. As long as your multifunctional device can scan to a folder, DocuWare can monitor that folder and then bring that into the system for processing. In addition to that, and as we touched on before, digital mail is not just necessarily about the physical mail. We still have the ability to automatically monitor mailboxes and automatically ingest those emails into the DocuWare system and then into the workflow. Now, what if you don't have a scanner? What if you've received some mail to your home address which needs forwarding on to somebody else? Now, this is absolutely fine. DocuWare provides a free paper scan app which is available on the Apple and Android stores. And in the paper scan app, it effectively turns your mobile phone into a scanner. We can scan, we can crop, we can compile, and we can route documents back into the DocuWare workflow. In addition to this, paper scan can actually be used to send and share documents to other applications on your mobile phone. So with the paper scan app and the built-in scanning applications, we make scanning capability accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world. So how do we organize and manage the mailroom or the inbound mail? Now, with the DocuWare solution, we're going to focus on the document trays and the filing cabinets. The document tray is the first place where the mail clerk potentially would scan the document into the DocuWare solution. Now, it's at this point, with the help of intelligent indexing, we can index the document so we can extract data from the file, from the mail. Could be the sender information, it could be the sender's address. And with that data, we can then store this into a permanent filing cabinet. And it's at this point, with the index information and the storage into the filing cabinet, that we can trigger the DocuWare workflow. When we're looking at the demonstration later, we'll see all this in action. And then finally, the document trays and filing cabinets can be fully customized to exactly what you want. DocuWare provides the tools, and we can customize that depending on the customer's needs and how they want the solution configured. Now, as mail clerks, you obviously got to think of security as well. So although the mail clerk can scan documents and store documents into the DocuWare system, even the clerk, we can start to look at what security access they have. Once they've stored documents into the DocuWare system, we can then prevent them from seeing the documents going forward. And this can be done on an individual basis, or it can be done to groups and users within the system. Now, I think what's really important and what goes on and above the kind of scan and email problem you have is that with the DocuWare system, when you've got documents in the system, they're centrally visible to everyone, but we've got that full audit trail of every action that's been completed. And this is very easy to view by IT administrators or anyone within the DocuWare system who has access to this. So it's really good or really great for keeping you in compliance. Now, as a mail clerk, within DocuWare, as you probably will know, we have what we call lists. And in this scenario, we could use lists as simple dashboards that give real-time information to the mail clerk about the status of the mail. It could be what's mail's open, it could be the mail we've processed today, but also as well, and we'll see in the demonstration, some very basic reports to give you some kind of MI information on the status of the mail. In addition to that, and when we see the outgoing mail process, we've got some basic cost center management as well for cost recovery for cost centers and project codes. Now, from the end user perspective, obviously, once I've received or me as a user has received some mail, all throughout the process, the user is notified. Now, this could be simply via an email, or it could be within the task list within DocuWare. And we'll have a look at these in the demonstration, but we'll also look at how we can start to reassign mail that may have been sent to the wrong person within the organization. Now, in addition to that, it could be simply that we are looking at a digital mailroom. All we want to do is scan some documents in and the user receipts them. But with the DocuWare solution, and as we know from previous webinars, we can expand this out to other areas of the business. So the workflow may start in the digital mailroom, but we can analyze the document with the metadata, with the index information, and then potentially forward that on to other workflows within the organization. Now, these could be invoice processing, they could be HR, they could be anything within the organization. And we've got an additional tool, the DocuWare Process Planner, that assists not only partners but customers to kind of visually map their processes, which make it nice and straightforward when we start to look at configuring the system. So that was a brief introduction to the mailroom. I'm going to move on to a demonstration now of both the incoming mail and outgoing mail. So just to set the scene, you'll probably be familiar with these names. We've got 3 people that are going to be involved in this digital mailroom workflow. We've got Peggy Jenkins, who many of you may be familiar with. She's no longer having to process invoices. She's, in this case, doing the digital mailroom. We've also got Peter Sanders in another browser. Peter, he's a recipient who works in the sales department, and he'll be receiving some mail and forwarding on and reassigning some mail. In addition to that, we've also got Peter Sanders' mailbox, and we'll see some notifications coming through which are automatically generated by the DocuWare system. We also have Fred Winner, who's going to be involved in the workflow, and Fred is going to approve a document via his mobile phone later on in the workflow. So if I go back into Peggy, so Peggy's role as the mail clerk is to essentially manage the mail that goes into the organization. So a very quick introduction to what we see here. We've got the DocuWare interface in front of us. We've not only have we got the web browser, we've also got the mobile apps. But in the web browser, we break it down into 2 key areas. We've got the document viewer, on the right hand side, and we'll see some documents going in there. And on the left hand side is where we've got our workspace. Today we're going to focus very heavily on our document trays, but also our lists. Now, our document tray is essentially our temporary holding point for documents, and this is where we're going to scan some documents into the system and then store them into the filing cabinet. With our lists, I've got a couple of lists open here. So these are real-time lists of open mail that's in the system. Currently there's none, but we'll see some documents going in there shortly. We've got a breakdown of today's mail, a mail that's been processed today. Again, there's nothing in the system at the moment. And then we've got a dashboard that gives Peggy an overview of documents that have been processed previously. Now, I've also got a very basic dashboard here that gives an indication to Peggy of some kind of metrics that relate to the mailroom activity. In this case, we've got a simple daily report on the number of documents or the number of mail that have been through the system. And as we start to process the mail, we'll start to see these numbers go up on here. Now, to kick off the process, I'm in my document tray. Now, I'm actually going to use the scanner attached to my PC at the moment. So with the built-in scanning application, I can simply hit scan from my tray, and this will open up the DocuWare scanning application. If I just click scan to kick it off, you'll see that we've got a document shortly going to come into the window and be processed. Now, whilst that's happening, we can see we've got a number of options here of things we can do. We can obviously select the scanner we want to use. In this case, it is my USB connected scanner. But in here as well, we can change it to color, grayscale, resolution. We can change that as well. So if the image quality is not quite what you want, the end user, without any additional software, has the ability to make changes to the document. So behind the scenes, you'll see now that we've actually captured an invoice. Now, Peggy's role here is to index, classify the document, and essentially trigger the workflow. So I've got a storage dialog, digital mailroom in front of me. Now, if I hit store on this document, you'll see we're presented with the mail that I've just scanned, and then on the left hand side we've got our index fields that relate to this. Now, the index fields you see on the left are fully customizable to the customer's requirement. In this case, I made a kind of simple assumption on what we want. So we got the document date, we got the company, we got the sender name, but we've also got some project codes and some drop down lists in here. Now, we can actually filter the drop down lists if we want. So for example, if the company name is Flying Tom, we may only want to display all of the project codes that relate purely to that customer. And this type of thing, and with filtering, this can really speed up the process for classifying and indexing the documents. Before I actually store this, you'll probably notice that we've already captured quite a bit of information from the document. Now, DocuWare, and in this scenario, is using what we call intelligent indexing to capture data from the documents. Now, with intelligent indexing, DocuWare will actually learn documents over time. So if you feed in a document, DocuWare will make a best guess where the key bits of information are on the page, and it will ask the user to effectively teach it where the information is. And it works on a traffic light system. So the first time DocuWare sees a document that it hasn't seen before, it'll make a best guess, but it will highlight it in red. The second time it goes through, it'll be yellow, and the third time, as we see here, we've got everything highlighted in green. And this is indication to the end user that is we've successfully captured the information. Now, I can hit store here, but it's going to refuse it. So what we've got is a mandatory field included in the store dialog. And the idea behind that is to add further validation to make sure we're capturing the correct information. So we've got Peter Sanders, who is the guy that the post is going to go to, and we've got the filtered select list, which will now show what departments Peter's belongs to. If Peter belonged to more than one department, then we'd obviously see more there. So I'm going to allocate sales to this, and I'm going to hit store on this document. And that document is now stored into the system. Now, if I go to my list, we'll see here now Peggy can now see that she's got an open mail sitting in the dashboard, and this is just a visual indication to Peggy that something needs to happen. Now, if we actually look in here in the today's mail, this document is now populated in here as well. Obviously, in today's mail, the more documents that go in, the more we'll get displayed with. And this is really handy if, for example, a document's been sent or there's a query. Peggy has easy, quick access to the document to be able to answer any query that she gets over the phone. Now, if we look into our report, we'll see here that on today's date, we've got a total mail count of 1. Now, just on this, on the report for the kind of MI, we could add further fields to that. Obviously, for the purpose of the demonstration, we've kept this nice and simple. So Peggy's now processed or sent this mail to Peter. So I'm going to log on as Peter in my web browser. So currently I've got Peter's email account in front of us, and we've now received an email from the DocuWare system notifying Peter that he's received some posts. So if I click on the mail is fully customizable. I've made this very simple. I've added a couple of variables in here so we can see who the company is, who the sender is, but we've also got some links to the task in the workflow, but also as well I've got a link down here to the self-service portal, which we're going to look at shortly. So directly from my mail or Peter's mail, I'm going to click on the link, and I'm going to then get presented with the DocuWare screen. Now, from this screen, now this is again fully customizable, and I've actually got 4 options in my workflow. We can simply approve the document, which essentially is a read receipt. So this will notify the mailroom that Peter has agreed that yes, this is my mail. But also as well, at this point, we have that audit trail that now says the mail's been booked in, it's gone to Peter, and Peter has proved to us that he's read that. So if there's any query further down the line, if the customer's saying, well, why haven't you done this, why haven't you done that, or there's an internal dispute, we've got that full audit trail to see exactly where we are with that document. So in this case, I'm just going to hit confirm on here, and that's now Peter's task complete. So if I go back into the mailroom as Peggy, we'll see here now that the open mail has now disappeared. This has been processed, and it's actually moved it into the completed mail dashboard. Now Peggy can very easily double click on this, and we now see the document. But we've also got a stamp that's been put onto the page automatically by the DocuWare workflow, and this just gives a nice visual indication to the end user or whoever it is that's viewing it within DocuWare that something's happened to that. In addition to this, we also have the ability to look at the full history of the document, and we can see which workflows have touched it going through there. So very simply, as a mailroom operator, I can see when the workflow kicks off, I can see who approved it, and I can see when it was completed. So this is all great. This was a nice straightforward piece of mail that Peter accepted. But what happens if, for example, a document or mail was sent in error? So I'm just going to quickly drag over another document into my document tray. Just wait for the intelligent indexing to do its thing. Excellent. Okay, now this is highlighted in red, and this is the indication to Peggy that we haven't necessarily seen this document before. So Peggy, as the mailroom clerk, is now going to store this into the system. Now we'll see here we're actually missing a couple of or most of the bits of information. Now, in order to teach DocuWare this document, we can either simply manually type, and I'll just wait for this to load. So we're going to store this document off and then trigger the workflow. Now, when we're storing this document off, intelligent indexing has indicated to Peggy that it doesn't know the document. So we've got the indication in red. Now, very simply, I can start typing, or we can take advantage of the drop-down list, or I can simply use the one-click indexing and grabbing the text off the document. I'm not going to put a sender's name in here because I don't actually know. There is no recipient name or sender's name in here. So I'm just going to put not applicable. Now, project code, in this case, I'm going to leave blank, and we're now going to send it on to someone in the organization. Now, if we actually look at this document, we can't see a recipient. So Peggy, in this case, is going to make a kind of best guess who it's going to go to. Now, in this case, we're going to, again, send it to Peter Sanders, and we're going to allocate the department on here as well. Now, by clicking store, again, very similar to what happened before. If we go back over to Peter's mailbox. Very shortly we should see a mail come through. Just wait for that to come through. Here we go, and now we've got the mail that's been generated for the second piece of mail. So from here I can click, again I click on the link within my mail, and now I'm presented with the document. Now in this case Peter's going to say, well, this isn't actually my post. So very simply from here I can select a slightly different option here, rejected, and hit confirm. Now by doing this, in this scenario, in this workflow, will now route the mail back to Peggy Jenkins into the mailroom. So logging back on as Peggy, if we go to her task list, very shortly we'll see a task coming through. And here we go. And we've actually got a task for Peggy that's basically saying that the mail that was just sent to Peter Sanders has been rejected. So if I double click on this mail now, we see the document in front of us. We get another stamp. This time it's in red because it's been rejected. And from here, we can now reassign this to another user. So I'm just going to select Fred Winner in this case, and I'm going to log on to my mobile phone application. And Fred Winner, who now will have a task assigned to him, is not in front of his laptop. He's actually working remotely or working from the back garden. And with the DocuWare application, we have the ability to view documents, but also as well action any tasks that have come through. And we see here we've got a task that's been generated by the system. If I click on my tasks as Fred Winner, I can see that I've got incoming mail. I can view the mail. I can see the stamps that are on here, and now we've got two stamps. We've got the original rejected, but we've now got the reassigned stamp from the mailroom. And from here, Brian can now approve his mail. Now, if we go back to the mailroom and look at the lists, we see the open mail has now disappeared and it's now moved in to the completed mail. If we actually view this document now, we'll see that we actually have three stamps on there. So we've got the original one from Peter Sanders, we've got Peggy Jenkins reassigned stamp, and we got the final approval stamp on here as well. So we've got that full audit trail all throughout. So that's just an example of how we can handle some of the incoming mail. Again, the workflows that your customers would want can be fully customizable. It really depends on how simple or how complex you want to make it. It may be that you don't need dashboards and you just need a simple storage, retrieval and send. Absolutely fine. So moving on from the incoming mail, I want to briefly show you a very, very basic way that potentially we could handle some kind of outgoing mail. So even if you're working from home, there still may be times when you actually physically need to post mail out. Now, this would still need to be probably managed by the central mailroom or the administrator who's in the office. So I've got a couple of different dashboards to show you now. I'm going to bring up my cost center and project balances dashboards, and these are just some kind of ongoing costs that we're allocating for mail and postage, and we'll see some of these figures change as we work through the workflow. Now, to actually generate a mail requisition, we've actually generated or created a DocuWare form. Now I'm logged back on as Peter Sanders, and we've got a very, very simple DocuWare form that I created. I've actually pre-populated most of the data on here for the purposes of the demonstration, and we could obviously add additional bits of information as well. Now, for the mail requisition, Peter wants to send a letter by physical mail via the mailroom. So very simply from the DocuWare form, Peter can fill out the information he wants. He can select what type of mail service, is it first class, second class, etc. But he can also allocate the costs that are going to be associated to the mail to a project code and potentially a cost center. Now, to actually bring the mail in or actually send this back to the mailroom is very simple. I can simply drag and drop a document from my file system. So it's just simply a PDF we've got here, and now I can hit submit. And by hitting submit, this will now generate the mail requisition back to the mailroom. So I'm going to log back on as Peggy Jenkins, and we'll see very shortly a task will come through, and here it is. So Peggy's now been notified that Peter Sanders actually wants to send some mail. So if I double click on the mail requisition, we now get displayed with an actual job ticket form to begin with. So the form that Peter's filled out is now populated into a form. So we can see here we've got Peter Sanders' name, we've got the date, we've got the address of where it's going, but we've also got some cost center information as well. Now we could actually build some approval into this. For example, if Peter wanted to send this by a courier and it was going to cost £200, then we could build in some logic that said, well, anything over £50 we need to get manager approval. In this case, it's going to be a very simple, straightforward sending of the mail. Now, for Peggy to actually process this, she can then view the document, and from here she can print that out and then put this into an envelope and then send physically. So if we just imagine she's done that and it's all completed, Peggy can now allocate a cost to this, and if we look here, we're going to be associating this to project code 2, and I'm going to put in a cost of let's just say £34.99. So by hitting confirm, the outgoing mail has now been processed. That's now disappeared off the list. It's now gone into my completed mail list, and if we open this up now, we'll see that we've just got the stamp that we've just filled out. But also as well, if I log on back as Peter, Peter will receive an email, which we've got here, notifying him that the mailroom has now processed and sent the mail. So all throughout the process, Peter has got full visibility of where his mail and his documents are. So before I finish, just the last piece. Now, if we actually look at our project balances, we can see here I allocated to the project balance. It's actually saying £46.99, and the reason for that is not £34.99 is because we already had some value in there. So the idea behind having some kind of ongoing value is makes it very easy for cross-charging or the visibility to cost center managers to see how much money they're spending on post. In addition to this, we've also got the cost centers, and we've allocated some more costs to come off the sales cost center. So this is a very simple way that you could potentially handle some outgoing mail as well, and obviously we've seen the incoming mail as well. So that's the end of the demonstration. So I'm going to flick back into my presentation, and I'm going to open it up now to any questions that need answering. So bear with me whilst I open up my questions. So we've got a couple that have come through. It says, please, how do you configure the reports in the list? Now, the reports is quite interesting. It was an idea I put together. If I actually go back to my screen, so the reports are actually, in fact, very simple. They're not technically reports at all. They're data records that I created in a filing cabinet. Now, in theory, you could query some kind of database at the same time, but in this case, they're a very simple data record with a couple of fields. Now, I've got a balance field here, which just has an ongoing total. Now, throughout the workflow, we can obviously use calculations and update fields within that. So when we saw the outgoing mail requisition come through, very simply, we took the value that was in here, and in the workflow with that value, we did a lookup against the data record and then made a calculation based on that. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, doesn't look like we've actually got any more questions at the moment. So that concludes everything at the moment. I hope you found that beneficial. And although the digital mailroom solution demonstration is very simple, hopefully it gave you some ideas as well. So thanks very much for your time. And that concludes today's mail. Actually, before we go, we've now got a couple more questions that have come through. So apologies for that. So I'm going to basically go back to the questions now, as we've got quite a few coming through. So I'm going to answer, can you bulk upload images with separator sheets that are automatically removed? Yes, the answer to that is yes, you can. So with the scanning application built in, we can do that all within the DocuWare system. Next question, is it possible to block the visualization of the second page of the document? I'm not entirely sure I understand that question, but what I will do, I will contact you directly with an answer for that to just discuss that in more detail. And that looks like that's all the questions now. So many thanks for your time, and hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Many thanks. Bye.